Welcome to a brand new podcast series on coaching tools and approaches, brought to you by the Association for Coaching, the world's leading international professional body, which is advancing coaching in business and society worldwide. I'm your host, Claudia, coach and entrepreneur and co-founder of The Growing Coaches. Research shows that certain approaches can be effective. However, it also shows that integrating more than one approach can be even more effective. I will be in conversation with experts and look in more detail at some of these approaches, what the research says, how coaches can apply it in their practice, as well as live coaching demos to understand better how the approach is put into practice. Our aim in this series is to bring you closer to the research and the information on a variety of approaches that you might like to put into practice. Welcome to Tim Anstiss. He is a medical doctor, coach, behavior change specialist, trainer, and author. Tim, I'll let you tell the audience a bit more about yourself.
Well, thanks, and thanks for having me on the podcast, Claudia. So, medical doctor, but recognised relatively early on. I was kind of more interested in prevention and rehab than diagnosis and treatment. So, got involved in exercise, medicine, and occupational health, and learned cognitive behaviour therapy as a junior doctor in psychiatry, and then came across this approach, motivational interviewing. Learned it, used it, became a trainer in it, and it's spreading because it works, and it's spreading from different sectors. And just yesterday, I was training, 10 or 12 healthcare professionals at a local hospital. So really enjoy training others, and they seem to find it really helpful, including for brief conversations. So that's a big chunk of what I do: training and development, and supporting others and behaviour change programs.
Nice to hear that history, especially that it coincides with the history of the approach itself, going from the medical side or psychological side to then moving towards coaching, which is what we'll be covering today. Can you tell the audience a bit more about this approach and what it consists of?
Sure. So it had its origins in the drug and alcohol field, where the approach in the 80s or earlier was quite confrontational, telling people, judging them, look at your liver function, your family's leaving you, blah, blah, blah. And understandably, people became quite defensive. And what Bill Miller, who developed the approach, kind of discovered in a way is if you don't judge and label and criticize people or give them advice, if you just create a nice person-centered humanistic counseling approach and let them talk, they come out with what he termed at the time self-motivating statements. Things like, I'd like to, I want to, I should, I know I've got to. And those then can be strengthened using more of a behavioural approach to strengthen some of the positive things they say. And so that's the origins in a way. And now it's much more systematised. And there's been over 2,000 studies, including systematic reviews and meta-analyses. And it's widely recommended in guidelines, especially in healthcare. But there are books on using MI in social work, using MI in offending and the justice system, MI in sports, MI in leadership and management, because it's a theory-driven, evidence-based conversational style. And also many people, when they learn about it, it sits very comfortably with their own values. They realise, this is compassionate and caring and non-judgmental, and it's person-centered. So a lot of people have a nice experience when they learn about it because it kind of reinforces and validates some of the things they're already doing.
So a very researched topic, and also based on what the client is using and strengthening what they are saying. Before we go into an example of how the approach is used, could you tell the audience a bit more about the stages you go through when you are coaching with MI and the skills you need to use in terms of the way you talk to the client?
Certainly. So There's some principles which are around, evoking, drawing out rather than putting in, as you say. This isn't. It's not based on a gaps model. It's not based on there's something the matter with this person and I need to fix them. This is quite a positive psychology or asset-based approach. It recognises this person's probably got all the resources they need to move forward in their lives. They're just stuck. So there's this emphasis on evoking and acceptance and non-judgment and very much partnership. Some of the things you're trying to do are to resist the writing reflex. Notice any desire to jump in and fix and hold back. You want the person to fix themselves. Then there's really a big emphasis on empathy and trying to imagine yourself into the other person's shoes and communicate that attempt at understanding where they're coming from. But in addition to getting them to talk using open-ended questions about why maybe change is important, their own reasons, you also want to build up their confidence or self-efficacy that if they did decide to change, they'd be successful. So partly what I'm thinking about when I'm chatting with the person is, maintaining a good relationship, but trying to evoke and draw out their own motivations and reason and maybe strengthen those and build up their confidence or self-efficacy that if they did decide to change, they'd be successful. And to bring it back to the question you asked me, the 4 process are engagement. So you're always working on engagement and connection and listening, and you're sensitive to changes in the warmth or the alliance because you may want to fix that or empathize or apologize. Then there's focusing. These are conversations about something. So this isn't non-specific, just talk. There's a focus. It could be smoking cessation, it could be going on a date, it could be getting better at public speaking, it could be joining a health club, but something comes into focus. Ideally it's the client, but in healthcare there may be a bit of negotiation because the doctor, nurse or physio may also want to talk about something. But there's a focus to the conversation, and then as I've mentioned there's a big emphasis on evoking and drawing out what's already in the person, and then towards the end of the conversation sometimes, but not always, you make a transition to planning. And the key thing there is to stay in evoke mode rather than be an expert and say, great, you've decided to change, here's your plan. So those are the 4 main processes that, and you may move backwards and forwards during an MI-based conversation from one process back to another.
Perfect. So 4 stages that we'll see on an MI approach. You mentioned their positive psychology, and so I was wondering what are the closest cousins to this approach in terms of history-wise and how it evolved?
So history-wise, this focus on creating the right conditions. So there's an overlap or it helps deliver some of the Rogerian or humanistic person-centered counseling conditions. It pays a lot of attention to the relationship. So empathy, alliance, a goal congruence, making sure you and the person are moving in the same direction, non-possessive warmth, etc. There is an element of a behavioural approach because there's a focus on behaviour change, and also you're trying to perhaps selectively strengthen some of the things the person says and explore them, which indicate an interest in readiness or ability to change. But there's also an overlap with solution-focused approaches. So, for instance, some of the tools I may demonstrate, scaling questions, have been borrowed in a way from brief solution-focused therapy or coaching. So you're focusing a bit more on what's right with the person, what's working, what they want more of, rather than what's wrong with them. And certainly you're not really trying to fix, you're trying to help the person think about options and decide what's best for them.
Before we go on to the actual demo, is there anything else you feel the audience needs to know to pick out the different things you're doing?
It can be done very briefly, so it's very consistent and helps deliver what are called brief interventions, just 4 to 5 minute or 8 minute chats. So it doesn't have to be delivered in a 40 to 60 minute traditional coaching or therapy format. It's also the case that, it's very compatible with single session coaching or one at a time therapy or coaching, because often you're really helping the person think about whether or not they want to change and then hopefully become unstuck or come to a decision. And Bill Miller says, when readiness is present, little else may be needed. So once people stop smoking, lose weight, change their jobs, make a decision to cut up their credit cards and get out of debt all the time without any professional help. So it works in harmony with a person's natural decision-making processes. And once they've decided to change, or once they've got the motivation to change, little else might be needed. Now, you may want to offer them a follow-up conversation to see how they're doing. You may want to signpost them to a yoga class or some other activities. But as well as being effective, it seems to be rather efficient. So when I talk with healthcare professionals, I say sometimes, do you ever have the situation where as someone gets up to leave and they get to the door, they say, oh, just one more thing. And everyone in the room laughs because it's very common. And we call that the premature focus trap. So for some reason, the most important thing, because I say, how important was it? And they say, probably the most important thing the person wanted to speak about didn't come into the conversation. So it also seems to be efficient, not just effective. Because you may not need to talk to the person for an hour if after 10 or 20 minutes they feel they've come to a decision and they know what to do.
Thank you for that. So I think many coaches struggle with that part of course, having at the end of the session come the most important thing and wondering, oh my God, I need 60 minutes for this. So it's nice to have that in our pocket, so to say. But it also sounds like it's a great approach to integrate with other approaches when you are in an engagement with someone. And we had an episode already about integration of approaches, so something to look into.
And I should have mentioned that as well, because you're seeing books about motivational interviewing, CBT, because it is exactly as you say, it acts as a nice vehicle for which you could then, move into helping the person identify and change unhelpful thoughts and recognize cognitive errors. Or it could be you share with the person, gratitude, what went well, developing their strengths and increasing contact with nature, certain positive psychology interventions. So thank you for making that point and reminding me. It does lend itself well to integration with many other approaches.
So without saying much more, we'll move towards the demo. We have volunteered today Rob to be the coachee who is here with us, and Tim will coach him on a topic using motivational interviewing, and then we'll review it at the end. So I'll give you to the space. I'll disappear from here.
So Rob, thanks for agreeing to have a chat with me, and I'm just wondering if I can just take a couple of minutes to explain how I tend to work with people. Would that be okay?
Yes, please.
So I'm really here to help you think through where things are for you at the moment, maybe where you'd like to be, what you're doing, help you explore options, and maybe, but not necessarily, come to a decision. What I'm not going to do is to tell you what to do or jump in with and ask for advice. You're always going to be the decision maker, but I can certainly share with you some things other people may have found helpful or that I find helpful, but it's very much you're the decision maker and focusing on your ideas first of all. How does that sound?
Yeah, I understand that. That's great. Thanks, Tim.
And there's a range of things we could talk about. And as I've kind of mentioned earlier, this is sometimes to help people come to a decision about whether or not they want to change and how they want to change. And it really could be about anything. And I'm just wondering, is there anything you're thinking of changing but haven't got round to yet? Or maybe you've got mixed feelings about?
Yeah, there's a number of things, but I would say perhaps the thing that's most on my mind at the moment is sort of around my own personal health and fitness, something that's very important to me. Whilst I've been able to sort of maintain a decent level of exercise, diet I feel fine with, but in terms of sort of remaining up and about, moving, particularly as I've got busier over the last sort of 6 months or so, and we've moved house and changed location, and it's disrupted a number of different routines. I think one of the things I'm very conscious of is in good health, all being well at the moment, but maintaining that, recognising that I was able to do a lot more in terms of sort of fitness and exercise some sort of 6 to 12 months ago, but I've been getting out of the habit of that and struggling to get back into any kind of routine and habit on that side of things.
So you've been more active in the past,
Yeah.
and you're thinking about and curious about maybe becoming more active and getting back into some of the routines you used to get into for health and fitness reasons.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, on a scale of 0 to 10, Rob, how important is it for you to get back into a more active lifestyle where 0 is not at all important and 10 is very important?
Yeah, it's probably high up there. So about a 9, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you could have said 4 or 5 or 2 or 3. What are some of the reasons you said 9? Why is it important to you?
My feeling is without being healthy, it has an effect on everything else. So, being a father of 2 young lads and the sole breadwinner for the family and running my own business, it's very important I keep myself in good sort of mental and physical shape to be able to do all the things that I really enjoy and live up to the responsibilities that I've got. So, and I feel like without my health, or if that's jeopardized in any way, then actually it has a huge knock-on effect to everything else.
Yeah. You're not just doing this for you. You're doing it for someone else and for your 2 boys, etc.
Yeah.
And you've got some responsibilities, and you know that physical activity is a key determinant of health and well-being.
Yeah.
Any other reasons why? I mean, you've bundled a few together there for us, Rob. Any other reasons why you're thinking about becoming and staying more active in the future?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. Actually, as I sort of put more thought into it, in terms of sort of my mental health and well-being, I'm able to deal with the sort of ups and downs of work life as well as family life, I suppose. I'm certainly in a much better frame of mind and feel more confident and resilient, I think, once I've been training in any shape or form. And also I get, particularly if it does involve the family, I get a lot of pleasure out of the feeling. I sleep better. And I probably digest better, even though I haven't sort of done any kind of like scientific analysis around there. I think it's a general feeling of just better well-being, and certainly over the longer term as well. Yeah.
You've noticed multiple benefits of when you've been more active in the past, not just on your physical health, but also you enjoy it, and it helps you, relax and be content and be resilient.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering, on a scale of 0 to 10, where 0 is not at all confident and 10 is very confident, how confident are you that if you chose to, you could get back up to or significantly increase your levels of physical activity and exercise, within a space of, 4 to 5 weeks, if that's what you chose to do? 0 is not at all confident, 10's very confident.
Yeah, my immediate response was going to be around a sort of 6, 7, but actually it's a bit lower than that with that time frame. In the very near term, the 3 to 4 weeks, I think that feels a lower figure, more like a 5.
We could kick it out there to, a couple of months.
Yeah.
But how confident are you once you got started with physical activity, you could keep it up?
It would be even higher again. So I think more like a 7 to 8. I think once I've established the habit and got it, I'm pretty good at locking that in. Yeah.
Super. So you could have said 1 or 2, but you said, 5 or 6, roughly. What are some of the reasons you believe you can, start and maintain a higher level of physical activity when you set your mind to it?
Yeah,
Rob?
I think the key there is the setting my mind to it. I think once I'm clear about how it fits, actually, I think once I'm clear about how it fits into my life and where and when it happens and the resources I need to make it happen, once I've established those, I feel confident I can maintain it. I'm pretty good at that, the maintenance side of things.
There's some planning.
Yeah.
There's some planning to do. There's you need to rearrange some bits of your life to enable you to take this step.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
What else would help you become more Well, I'm just wondering, what would it build up your confidence of being success apart from this planning and arranging, Rob?
Possibly, maybe some sort of external factors. So if I was to, I'm kind of almost thinking in a sort of an accountability way if I'm doing this with others. So recently I took up beginners badminton, and what I enjoy about that is meeting up with the other people and seeing them. But I think there's also, there's an external element where there's my family are encouraging me to do that as well. So I think that would probably be another thought.
So external support and contact with other people can help you maybe get started, but also maintain it. Finding something you enjoy, for instance, like badminton. What else would help you be successful, Rob, in becoming and staying more active?
I think almost as a slight byproduct, and I feel it's almost the same thing that's got kind of getting in the way at the moment, is that the work and family routine has shifted quite a lot over the last six months. But I think there's a flip side to that, which is, for me, one of the benefits of, I feel partly what's getting in my way is the scheduling of it, is the time factor and where I fit that in. But I think, but the motivation,
you're juggling a lot of things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I think the benefit would be, in terms of the sort of motivation and what would keep me going, is knowing that when I got there, I'm actually planning my time in a way that's created some space for that to happen, which probably means I'm creating space for other things to happen in my life too at that point.
You can see some knock-on effects if you can, schedule and manage your time to enable you to become more active and take exercise. You can see some additional benefits in other life areas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe we could look at two possible futures for you, Rob. Let's imagine you decide now is the right time and you get your scheduling right, talk with other people, carve out time, put things in diary, get started, keep it up. And we chat in, 10 to 12 weeks time, and you're living a more active lifestyle, doing more exercise. What would that be like for you if we met up in the future and you've successfully got back to a higher level of physical activity? Rob, what would be different?
Yeah, I think just the thought of regrouping in that time frame is motivating in itself, because that plays nicely to my sort of sense of responsibility towards accountability there. So I think that thought in itself is actually quite motivating. But in terms of more directly answering your question, what would that look like? I think it sort of plays almost into the seasonal elements as well, in terms of slightly longer days, a bit more joyful. That's not to say I'm not at the moment, but certainly more so on that sliding scale. I think I could see myself traveling a little bit more lighter, feeling a bit happier, a bit more fit and healthy, kind of less creaky, perhaps. I've noticed sort of a little bit of stiffness coming up.
You'll move more easily.
Yeah, more, sleep better as well. I've noticed I sleep generally quite well, but I have been waking up a bit more randomly in the middle of the night and then not getting back to sleep, which is something, again, I sort of tend to associate more with physical activity. I can picture.
So you may have a deeper or better quality and longer sleep in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I do associate that quite strongly with physical activity. Yeah. I'm just generally in a better mood as well. So when I do play with the kids, I'm perhaps a little less short-tempered and a little less cranky in my sort of general well-being and sort of spirit.
And let's imagine that you don't manage to rearrange things and take this step and you don't get started. Again, we're chatting in 10 to 12 weeks and you haven't got started. Your current levels of physical activity. What would that be like for you?
Yeah, I think there'd be a sort of increasing sense of, I don't know if frustration is quite the right word, but certainly sort of some degree of anxiety, maybe fear in terms of the longer term effects of not doing it, because I recognise that also the benefits I've felt in the past from doing physical activity has been very much it's something that's rewarded me over the longer period of time in terms of my general underlying, I suppose, sense of self-esteem and that kind of thing.
You know this is good for you on multiple levels. And if we were to chat in 10 to 12 weeks' time, you'd have more concerns and worries about your health.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Can I summarise? Would that be okay, Rob?
Yeah, please, Tim.
So you've been more physically active and busy in the past, but, with COVID and other things, your job, your family, your two boys, you're finding it hard to get back to your previous level of physical activity. You're juggling a lot. You've got a lot of responsibilities. Some of the reasons why you'd like to become more active is, it's good for you. It'd be good for other people. You'd have more quality time, you feel, for yourself. And you'd be more likely to kind of preserve and maintain your health into the future. You also think your sleep might improve. And also, if you could get back into physical activity, you suspect that may have knock-on effects and you may get a little bit more organised in other areas, etc. For you, it's a matter of getting started. Once you've got started, you're reasonably confident you can keep it up. But for you, it's a matter of getting started, and you think that you're probably going to have to sit down, schedule, rearrange things, make the time and space, invest in yourself. And also, when you do get started, finding something you enjoy, you've just started badminton, that kind of stuff could be helpful. If you don't get started, you're thinking that, worries and concerns may increase over time. You'll be a bit more anxious about your health and, being able to maintain your active lifestyle, or being able to maintain the various things you're doing and your responsibilities. But if you could get started and keep it up, you could see your sleep will have improved, and you'll just have a better sense of psychological well-being and inner peace, as well as some of the health benefits as well. Is that about right?
Yeah, that sounds pretty accurate to me. Thanks, Tim.
So what are you going to do? What's next for you, Rob?
I think having this conversation has been quite motivating in itself, and actually just listening to your summary there and picturing those two different outcomes has been very useful as well, because just hearing those words, I can sort of almost feel the feeling of what it might be like to experience either one of those two outcomes. And actually the more positive outcome is quite motivating, just hearing it back actually and chatting it through with you.
Yeah.
My initial reaction to that is actually I feel quite determined to put some time into the planning side of things. So planning the planning, I suppose. I feel quite determined to take that very first step, which is to make the time to plan.
What's the easiest thing you could do just to get started, Rob?
The easiest thing to do, I think, for me would be to just have some fun planning it, actually, just thinking about what would be fun activities to do.
Okay. When do you think you might do this, Rob?
I think I could do that before the end of the week. I feel quite determined to do it now. I've had a conversation about it. So
very good. Yeah. So piece of paper, pen, have some fun thinking about and planning what it is you might do to become more active in the future. With a view to what? What would be the next step after that?
Yeah, so I think that before the end of the week, including the weekend, would be the fun time to plan for that. And then I think with the shorter February month, my sort of eagerness would be to get at least one new thing in place before the end of that month.
Very good. What might get in the way of your plan, Rob?
That's a good question. Very little, I hope. I think now that I've kind of thought about that process and what would be the easiest thing to do, I think I'm sort of motivated enough. I think that the only thing that could actually would be just to forget to do it. It could be as simple as that.
You're busy.
Yeah, exactly. So it might just fall off the agenda.
How could you find a way around that, or what would you do if that happened?
If that happened, I would make the commitment again. I think I'll probably be even more motivated knowing that it hadn't happened. But I think the easiest thing I can do looking around me right now is to get a Post-it, stick it up on the screen in front of me and have that there until it's taken, take it down once it's done, so to speak.
A nice little reminder. Yeah. Is there anyone who can help you with this change, Rob?
Yeah, my wife, definitely. She's great for holding me accountable in that sense. So, yeah. Sharing it with her.
Will you have a chat with her before you sketch it out on a bit of paper?
Yeah.
Or
well, I determined to speak to her before the end of the day and have the Post-it up before the end of the day too.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, I've got every confidence you can be successful. And once you got started, and it sounds like you've got a plan to get started. And, it's obviously family is important to you. And some of the reason you're doing this is to look after yourself so you can look after other people. I look forward to maybe chatting with you in the future and seeing how it goes, Rob.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tim.
I'm just wondering, I wonder if you can help me get slightly better as a coach. On a scale of 0 to 10, Rob, how helpful did you find this relatively brief chat with me? 0 is not at all helpful and 10's very helpful. Don't flatter me.
Yeah, okay. I would say 7 or 8. Yeah, certainly that end.
Super. And you could have said 2 or 3. What specifically did you find helpful about this MI-based conversation with me today, Rob?
I think the reflective summary was very useful. Hearing back, not what I could do, but what I will do, that was very useful for me. But also just hearing the reflections were very, very useful. I think hearing my own words back actually had the effect of feeling the feelings. So rather than them just being words, it gave me an opportunity to actually visualize the intentions.
And the view is if I'm the one doing the arguing in favour of change, the wrong person's doing the arguing. So I was very much trying to draw ideas out from you. And if you were to give me a little bit of advice or some tips, if we had another chat in the future, how I could move towards an 8 or a 9, is there anything perhaps I could have done differently that might have been more helpful for you, Rob?
I think the pace that you were reflecting was quite fast for me. I think I could have heard it back more slowly, which would have allowed me to feel the feelings a little bit more deeply. My only thinking there is that I did feel the feelings, but I think given a bit more time and a bit more time to sort of digest and reflect on the reflections would have given a stronger sense of those feelings, which may have been, I don't know until I feel them, may have been even more motivational for me. So,
yeah. Well, that's really helpful feedback for me, Rob, and I'll try to bring that into my future conversations with people. So thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you for that to both. That was great. Tim, do you want to reflect on the process you just went through?
Yeah. So hopefully people might be able to notice I was trying to maintain engagement, not getting into arguments. You don't do that anyway as a coach, really, but paying a lot of attention. It's a lot of active listening. So in MI, we talk about using ORs, asking open-ended questions. And I asked more open-ended questions than closed because I wanted Rob talking about stuff and exploring. Then A stands for affirmations. That's commenting on, noticing on what's right with Rob. And I threw in a couple of those affirmations about the importance of family, being a good dad, having responsibilities. He's done it before. So I was noticing particular things. We use the acronym VARS, values, achievements, strengths, and effort. So I was trying to pick up and maybe occasionally reflect back and affirm things about Rob. And then the R in ORS is reflections. And it was nice that he gave me some nice feedback, how helpful he found me reflecting back and paraphrasing what he said. So I was trying to say things back to him using a different form of words without any loss of meaning. And he gave me some nice feedback. I could have done that a bit slower. And then the S in ORS is summarising. So I think I might have put in a couple of summaries, but certainly a longer summary. After I'd done 2 possible futures, I said, can I summarise? And I summarised back. And that does a couple of things. It marks a transition in the coaching from talking about what he might do and why to whether or not he's going to, because after the summary, I say, what's next for you? So decision time. But also it helps me check I've understood him correctly, and it has the effect on the individual. So I think we need to remember yes, I'm doing some work, but the real work is going on inside Rob's brain. This is trying to elicit and strengthen and deepen his own reasons, in this case for becoming more active, and also draw out from him his own ideas about how we could get started and keep it up and maybe strengthen those. So there's definitely I was listening for change talk, and I was trying to strengthen both perceived importance in Rob's own mind, but also self-efficacy, because both of those can increase readiness to change. And then there was a transition to planning where he kind of came out with a plan, and I tried to make it as easy as possible with the phrase, so what's the easiest thing you could do, the simplest thing just to get started? And then he seemed to be away.
Thank you for that. So you started very nicely with contracting and that thought of, I'm not going to fight you and, I'm not going to fight your ideas. So putting that early on in the conversation. And as you mentioned throughout the way, you were doing lots of reflecting where Rob was saying time scheduling and you were reflecting back, you're juggling a lot of things, which is in some way a different way of putting the situation. I guess this can also come with fear on the part of the coach, because he might, in that reflection, you might take something, assume something and put it in different words, but also changing the meaning. How would you advise coaches to go about this when practicing reflections? And
so there's an excellent book by Bill Miller called Listening Well or Listen Well, which I'd recommend people to read. But you obviously want accurate empathy, not inaccurate empathy. So you want to change the form of words, but without any loss of meaning. And it might even be, I don't know, we'd have to ask Rob. Sometimes when I reflected back, he had a bit of an aha moment, or he thought of something else. So there's this strong sense of evoking and drawing out what's already in the individual. When I train healthcare professionals, certainly, Stephen Covey said most people listen to respond rather than listen to understand. Listening to understand, you have to pay close attention. And you have to think, what is it this person means? And so you're saying, this is like this for you. It's a bit like this for you. But if you get it wildly wrong, they'll correct you. So it doesn't matter if you genuinely use a reflection and get it slightly wrong, because the person commonly wants to elaborate. People want to be understood, not misunderstood. So if you said, yeah, you're feeling pretty angry about this, they might say, no, I'm not angry. I think I'm feeling a bit more frustrated or maybe irritated. And that in itself can be good. And there's a saying, and it kind of was borne out by something Rob said, I think BEM, self-perception theory. I know what I think when I hear myself speak. It's this process of people, clothing some of their thoughts with words, vague thoughts, that they haven't really spoken. That can make things a bit more objective and concrete for them. And I often find that helpful.
So basically it all ends up in being more information. And even if you get it wrong, or even if you misunderstood them, they will elaborate on it and they will get that feeling of feeling understood.
Typically, and that's what you're going for. There's a metaphor of a dance, learning MI, but doing MI is like a dance. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. Sometimes they're leading, sometimes you're leading, but you're never really getting far apart. And it's the empathic reflections that keep you kind of checking that you're really understanding the person and staying close to them.
Another thing I noticed was that you used, when you were doing the 2 possible futures, you basically first focused on the positive one, or on the one that would be related to the change they want to do. Yeah. And then you focus on what if the change doesn't happen. Is it relevant which one you start with, or indifferent?
I don't believe there's a literature on it. It feels natural to me. And I think that there is a literature that people are more motivated to avoid loss than gain something. So people are more motivated to avoid losing £2,000 than gaining £2,000, I think. And so in a way, one of the things I was trying to do with Rob is what's called develop discrepancy. A discrepancy is the mismatch, the felt mismatch between either the person's current behaviour and their values, and he was already coming up with that, and I tried to strengthen the discrepancy, but also that where they are at the moment and where they want to be in the future. And so exploring 2 possible futures, and I think Rob expressed this quite explicitly, tries to increase inside the client a sense of discord or a gap between where they are and where they want to be. So this isn't necessarily about putting people at their ease. In fact, there's something about increasing psychological discomfort because that's going to motivate them to make a behaviour change. So long as they think they can. You don't just want to disturb them without any hope. You want them both to become a little bit more uncomfortable with the status quo, but you also want to help them, see a goal or a path towards a better future.
Rob, how does this land with you? Because this brings to mind what you were saying of what was going inside you and the emotions, and almost like the mirror he was holding with the reflections and the emotions you were feeling because of that.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing back the sort of mechanics of it, because actually that discord and that sort of almost psychological discomfort wouldn't be the labels I would have given what I was feeling. I think the feeling I was actually experiencing was a positive motivation, but I tend to agree with Tim, if agree is the right word, that it was I felt much more motivated at the end of that conversation towards those aims than I was at the beginning of them. There was definitely an element of that motivation which was a moving away from, based on the sort of summaries and reflections that Tim offered. So there's an ingredient in that experience for me, which is a moving away from, which is probably that discord, that discomfort that Tim's alluding to there, even though I wouldn't have described those feelings as that.
I could have ramped it up a bit by saying, Rob, I'm just wondering, what would it be like for you if you lost your health and couldn't work for 6 months?
Yeah.
So I could have.
Yeah, and already I can feel that. Yeah. And I'm like, whoa,
yeah.
Okay, yeah, this is really serious. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I should have thrown that one in, Rob.
I guess you would gauge that, Tim, based on the amount of change talk you're hearing from Rob. And if there is less change talk, you might be a bit more dramatic about it.
Well, and also, we're moving in the right direction, but certainly when you hear change talk, the view is you use your ears, you ask for elaboration, you make an affirmation, you offer a reflection or a summary. And so when Rob said it's really important to maintain my health, I've got a lot of going on, a lot of responsibilities, it would certainly be MI consistent for me to say, I'm just wondering what would it be like for you if you did lose your health, Rob? And that would have taken the conversation in a particular direction, but in a motivational one.
Perfect. And I guess thank you as well for, at the end, coaches struggle sometimes with asking for feedback, and you put that right there, and a very easy, direct way of asking for feedback and using a bit of the MI technique of scaling.
Yeah, I thought other coaches who might be listening, I find that a really helpful technique. So you can get feedback from every client you coach, or an awful lot of them, by just asking, that question. But also it helps with the relationship. So it's not just that you get feedback about what people find helpful about your coaching and their suggestions for you getting better, either for them or other people in the future. And of course, be non-defensive. But also it helps you demonstrate to the person that you're very open and that you'd like to be a better coach. So it can help with the therapeutic or the coaching alliance too.
Yeah, it was nice to see how you went from the negative and the positive. So what was the positive that he had experienced, but also what advice, and the nice way of putting it as an advice, what advice would you give me, rather than a very technical sound to it, which made it feel natural.
And just if we want to digress into the literature, we know from multiple studies of psychotherapists, not necessarily coaches, that many psychotherapists do not get better even 5, 6, 10 years after training, because they don't engage in deliberate practice with feedback. And so if coaches want to continuously improve, you need to get feedback, and you can get it from every person you coach commonly. But also you need to think, what am I going to do differently? And Rob's genuinely given me some advice, which is, don't rush the reflections, slow down a bit, because they had an emotional impact on him. And that's really helpful, and that could improve my performance as a coach in the future.
Tim, now as we just saw how it could be used within a session. However, there's also the time in between the sessions where the client can do a bit more reflection. How would you complement MI in between sessions, or, from one meeting to the next one?
I think it very much depends on what they choose to talk about. So if you wanted to learn mindfulness, I might say, well, what apps have you got in mind? Can I share with you some ideas? There are some decisions that are just do it. I need to decorate my room. And they come and you have a chat with them and they decide, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go to whatever. I was going to say Wix, but other brands are available. Buy some paint and do it. So some things are just do it. Other changes may require more planning and more skills. And so, I tend to offer people a future conversation. I WhatsApp them, I might email them, But so Windy Dryden writes extensively and very well about single session therapy, single session coaching, one at a time. Many people get better enough after 1 or 2 sessions of therapy, and probably coaching as well. And they drop out from therapy, or it's considered dropout, but actually they've got better enough. And so we need to recognise that many people get what they want from 1 or 2 sessions, and they don't need more sessions. Now, I know there's pressure on coaches, because you've got to earn a living, but I'm fortunate in a way. I can offer people 1 session, and if they want another session, I'm happy to help them. So I make that available, and like I say, you can contact me if you want. And the nice thing about that is they don't feel pressurised, and if they've had a good experience, they may be likely to come back or send other people your way.
Perfect. And in terms of technology, how is MI impacted or benefited or hindered by technology?
In healthcare, there's telephone health coaching. An awful lot of telephone-based health coaching is MI-based. I've trained telephone-based health coaches in using MI, and obviously with the pandemic, more people are using Zoom. But that's not specific to MI. I've got a little digital health startup called Virtual Health Labs.
Nice. Are there any other technologies that you know of out there in the market that coaches could use to support their practice?
Yeah, well, there's a really nice app called Listen, Lyssn, or the company, and so what they do is they listen to conversations and then score and feedback. So if you want to know if you're getting better at MI, you can get a conversation coded. So there are people who are trained as coders. We want to know in research whether MI is being done well or poorly, and so there are the Motivational Interviewing Treatment Integrity Index version 4.2. So there are ways of scoring or getting your quality, like the ratio of open to closed questions, the ratio of questions to reflections, who does most of the talking, opportunities to notice and capture change talk. So you can, if you want, get feedback, send in 20 minutes of your coaching to a trained MI coder and they can feedback. But as I mentioned, there's some technology now that can listen in or live, or I think you might send a 20-minute sample, and that uses kind of artificial intelligence and other things to kind of give you feedback about how well you're doing at MI and what you might do differently.
Thank you for that. In terms of teams and groups, how does it apply differently to groups?
Yeah, the book Motivational Interviewing in Groups is in its second edition. Some groups can be quite educational and instructional, assuming that, for a person to maybe look after their diabetes better, they need more facts and figures and skills, etc. And they don't necessarily spend the time to get the person talking about why they might want to, what their strengths, what are their concerns, their ideas. So I've created a couple of programs, a community-based weight loss program using MI. So, it might be that in that we talk about protein. So first of all, the instructor might say, so in 2s and 3s, have a little chat about, the importance of protein in the diet and ways of getting it. And then you let the person or 2s and 3s in a group of 20 or 30, talk about that. And then you draw out from them and you link different parts. So you're not engaging in instructing and telling and educating. You've got this person-centered approach as you're using the MI principles. Now, towards the end, you might say, can I share with you some of the other stuff we know about protein? But you're only bringing information in slightly later. So if you are running groups, good, because groups do things differently from one-on-one conversations. Obviously, you can learn from other people and tap into the wisdom in the room, etc. But MI is a very nice way, a mindset or a spirit to run groups. And it takes the pressure off you because, you get people talking. You're acting more of as a facilitator and a coach.
Have you also seen it used in teams within companies?
Yeah, so I do a little bit of training for managers and teams. I've got a little training program called Person-Centered Management. And yeah, it works well because you could, and there's an overlap with something called appreciative inquiry, which is another kind of positive organizational development or strength-based approach. But you could imagine, for instance, working with a team, and let's say they've got to change their IT, and it's been imposed on them to move towards a new software system. You might say, how important is it for us as a group to kind of get to grips with and implement this new software within the next 2 to 4 months, on a scale of 0 to 10, And why is it important to us to roll our sleeves up? And then you might say, and on a scale of 0 to 10, how confident are we as a group we can actually, switch over to this new software and get on top of it and give it feedback and customize it, so that it's operating well. Why is it we think we can do this? Why else do you think we can do this? What would be helpful? What would build our confidence? So I think you can see how this can help a team leader or a manager use the same kind of principles of evoking and drawing out from individuals in the team. And also, one of the things you're doing, MI, is rolling with resistance. You're not getting defensive. If someone says, oh, this software is rubbish, it's not as good as the previous stuff, you'd say you're disappointed this is happening. Or you've got some concerns that actually you're not going to be able to do some of the things with the new software you did with the old software. So there's this empathy for individuals and group and team members, but also working with strength. So I think there's a new book out. Well, Guildford Press published the series of books on MI, but there's Motivational Interviewing for Leadership and Management in Health and Social Care, and that's a state-of-the-art book on how you can use MI in leadership and teams and management.
Thank you so much for that, Tim. Is there anything else you want to leave the audience with?
Well, thanks for listening. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to engage in this podcast and talk about MI and demonstrate it. So I learned about this approach 1994, got trained in it, and it's just a gift that keeps on giving. So I'm very fortunate. It's changed my career. I've been involved in, just got a paper, one author on a paper looking at hepatitis eradication, because it's just so widely applicable as a methodology. So if you were to get trained in MI, you can always get better at it, and it may, who knows, it may even improve the quality of other areas of your life if it improves your empathic listening and stops you jumping in with unasked for advice in some of your other relationships.
Is there, talking about training, where would you recommend people to train, or what is out there where people can train to become MI proficient?
Thank you. There's a few. They may not become proficient, but certainly they'll get started. And there's a debate about what proficiency is, but that's an academic point. But there's a MINT. The training organisation is the Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers. So if you go to MINT, the Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers, you can learn about different trainers in different countries with different backgrounds, like prisons or social work or health or rehab or alcohol, and in different languages as well. You may find me on there. I think I'm still on there. But yeah, so there are, the Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers will be a good place to start if you want to search around and find someone, close to you, or who may have a specialist interest in your particular area or application.
And I guess the first thing to do is to start practicing reflective answers on normal conversations with friends and colleagues.
And you can take a one step back and you can practice your empathic listening, just listening to a radio or a TV interview like Graham Norton. So you can listen to someone talk, and then you can pause it. And then you could say, so this movie went in a completely different direction, one you weren't expecting. Or, in your car, not when you're with people, that's embarrassing, but, you're in the car, you're listening to a radio, the news, and you could press off, and then you can offer the person on the radio an attempt at an empathic reflection. So you can practice using TV and radio in the comfort of your own car or home before you try it for real.
Sounds good.
But one thing I do say is in my training is have any of you ever spoken with someone and they've said, yeah, exactly, 100%. And I say, yeah. I said, well, you probably offered them an empathic reflection because they felt got. If they say, oh, definitely, you were already doing it. And similarly, if you yourself, you're chatting with someone and they say something, you say, yeah, absolutely, definitely, then that's you feeling understood. So people are already doing this. But the good news is it's a skill and you can get better at it with deliberate practice. That's the key thing. And thanks for bringing it up, Claudia. Deliberate practice of the right thing makes a big difference to skill development.
I guess the other thing would be that the thing that surprised me about this approach was how sometimes it's not even that they're feeling ambivalent about changing, but it's more they're saying they want to change and that's what they want. And suddenly you hear them saying something in the complete opposite direction. And to me, that was also a sign of that I was using empathic listening when someone who clearly had an issue with something and they came because in theory they wanted to change that issue, and suddenly they were saying, you know what, I don't see it. I still don't see it. And when they finally said that, I was like, okay, I would have never gotten here if it wasn't because of that empathic type of listening. So I guess that's the other side of it, not just the someone who's determined, but
people open up to you. People may be, yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm really confident, and they're full of bravado. But then when they realise that you actually are a non-judgmental listener, you're not going to jump in with advice, you are going to empathise, then they may be more comfortable opening up and saying, well, actually, I do have some mixed feelings. I am a little bit concerned about this. So, good job for you, Claudia, for getting someone to open up and move away from their starting position.
Well, I think I'm in that boat of I need to practice a bit more. I was very passionate about MI and then somehow left it a bit. And it's definitely, as you say, a skill that and an approach that is very good to integrate with coaching practice. So thank you for that, Tim. It's been inspiring. So Tim, what's next for you?
Couple of things. I haven't written a book, so I'm doing a lot of work in cancer settings with cancer healthcare professionals. So I'm planning to write a book on, well-being coaching in cancer settings. But also I'm currently designing and developing an online course with a toolkit and videos and demonstrations and worksheets, MI for coaches. So I'll find a way to let people know. I need to update my website, the Academy for Health Coaching. People can also find me on LinkedIn. But within the next 4 to 5 weeks, maybe, promoting and launching a course, MI for coaches.
Perfect. Looking forward to seeing more about that. And thank you again for joining us today and telling us all about MI.
I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for the opportunity. And thanks, Rob, for being brave enough to have a little coaching session with me.
Thank you, Tim. Enjoyed that.
Thank you to both. Thank you for listening to another episode by the Association for Coaching. I have been Claudia Day. We hope this episode offers you some new insight and inspiration. For 20 years, our purpose has been to inspire and champion coaching excellence, advance the coaching profession, and make a sustainable difference to individuals, organizations, and society. To find out more about the AC and our member benefits, follow us on LinkedIn or explore our webpage at associationforcoaching.com. There, you can keep up to date with our latest episodes, enjoy the wealth of digital learning offerings, and gain insights from our Coaching Perspectives magazine.